Hi, I'm Ryan Ashley, and today I'm going to make building block jewelry. I've been making peyote stitch jewelry for a long time. It's one of my favorite techniques, but I've been extra inspired recently with all of the Lego things that are happening out there. The Lego show just had a recent finale. So I thought we could use peyote stitch to kind of make our own version of what we like to think of as building blocks. So today, what we're going to make is a bracelet. So today I'm going to use a chasing hammer, have 2 different colors of delicate beads, a bench block and pad, fire line beading thread, beadsmith beading needles, and 16 gauge brass wire. The first thing I do is pull out a few inches of wire. I like to make my bangles a little bit loose, so I always start out with a little extra and then I can snip it later if I want to. So this is about 6 or 7 inches. Snip with my flush cutters. And then before I do anything else, I just hammer the dickens out of this wire because I want it to be nice and flat and have a really nice hammered look. And you can hammer this as many times as you want. You can get it super flat. You can keep it a little bit rounder like this one is. I'm gonna keep it at this size and shape, but I am gonna add a little bit of texture to it with the other side of my chasing hammer. So kind of going back and forth a couple times. Okay, cool. I like the way that looks, but I want to go ahead and flatten it out before I shape it for my wrist, just to make sure everything is straight and it's not wobbly at all. Right now it's kind of wobbly. So I put it on its side to straighten out those wobbles. And I just lightly tap along the side, and I'll do the same thing from above and below. Okay, see, that's pretty bowed there. Yeah, it's starting to straighten out. All right, just gonna keep hammering to make this flat, but I'm hammering a lot more lightly than I did before. So now I have a long piece of brass that's been hammered and texturized. And I like to shape my bangles by hand because I like them to be a little bit more organic than the shapes I get when I use a bracelet mandrel. So I'm just gonna start kind of shaping it. And I like for mine to be a little off center because we are going to create the peyote stitch piece and wrap it around one side at the top of the bangle. So this will end up kind of balancing that look out. Let's see. I have a little bitty wrist. Oh, so that's about the size I like. So I'm going to do the same thing I have here, create a loop on one side and a hook on the other, and then this is where we'll put our building block peyote stitch piece. So now I'm gonna grab my tray to put all the supplies out. Here I have my beads. I love these. Now that I have it all hammered and shaped, I'm going to create my loop and my hook. I'm using a bail shaping plier for the loop. I'm just bending it backwards. Like that. Now, for the loop, I'm going to create sort of a hook shape and then bend it a little this way and that to make it just right. Using that same plier. See, just get a little bit of a bend there. I use the larger side Now to bend that wire back so I can create my hook. And you can make your hook look however you want. You can make it a little bit more curved. You can make it a little bit of, a different angle, a different shape. I really like this kind of shape because I just think it looks cool. Now, I mentioned before I like things to be a little off center. This one is right in the center. So this happened to me last time too. I kind of pull at it to reshape it a little bit and get it a little off center. So when I add the peyote stitch, it is in the middle. This is probably a little bit more organic than I want, so I'm just gonna use my flat nose pliers to just kind of squeeze in a couple places, just to make it a little straighter. Cool. So I like that shape. I like that the middle is off center, and now we are going to create our building block peyote stitch beadwork. All right, so first things first, I'm gonna grab our fire line, pull out, about 1.5 feet of length, and I use an X-Acto knife or any kind of blade really to cut that. I don't really like to use my flush cutters. It's a little bit too fine for that. And I don't want to use my scissors because it is technically like a wire, and I don't want to put any little grooves in my scissors, and that can happen over time. Okay, and I grab one of my beading needles. Now this is the exciting part because threading the needle can be a little bit of a challenge. So what I do is I almost like pinch it and then kind of encourage it through the eye of the needle. I pull it down so I have a bit of a tail. And then before we get started, I like to add what we call an anchor bead. And this ensures that as I'm stitching these beads together, they don't fall all over the place. So I put a bead on the other end and I tie a single knot, leave a few inches there, tie a single knot. This will come out at the end of your project, but we will need this at the very end, so make sure not to snip it. Okay, so now we have this long length, and the first thing we're gonna do is put 6 beads on the needle. I like to start with just one color, so that way I can create my pattern as we go. Okay, I've got 6 beads there. You could put 7 or 9 or 11, but if you put an odd number of beads, it'll make this much more of a challenge. The even number is way easier to work with than an odd number. I'll go ahead and show you kind of what to expect here. See how I have these little shapes of the second color? You can make this piece as wide as you want, as colorful as you want. You can arrange the beads, this alternate color, any way you want. It just depends on how many you put on first. Like we're putting on 6, you can use as many as you want. So we're starting with 6, and then I'm gonna add one of these shiny beads first. So first step on row 2 is we thread back through the second bead. Never go through to the first. Okay, we're gonna create think building blocks here. We're creating sort of like a brick building block puzzle piece pattern. So I'm gonna grab another purple one and I skip bead 3, I go into bead 4. Yeah, okay. And we do every other bead like that. Picking up another purple one, going into the final bead on the row. So we have completed our second row. Now we're going to go to row 3. And you can see here, we kind of already know where to go. Now that this is starting to take shape, we're going to add a bead to each little valley and just go right through the beads that are sticking up. These little, it kind of looks like a zipper. All right, so I am gonna grab another purple. And you keep doing this until you get to the end of the row. I want to create a little bit of a shiny shape. So here, I know that this bead is going to live right next to this shiny one. So that's what I'm going to add. Okay, now we're on row 4. Turn it around. I know exactly what to do because it has that zipper shape. Look, you can start creating any shape you want with these. I like making little triangles. Okay, you're just gonna do this for a few rows, arranging the beads however you want. And when it gets long enough to wrap around your hammered metal bracelet, I'll show you how to finish it. I love this fire line because it's nice and stiff and allows you to actually do this a lot more quickly than when I use just straight up nylon thread. Testing it to see if it fits. And looks like we're ready. So just to give you a little more information about this, this is where we started. Started by adding an anchor bead and then creating a row of 6 delicate beads. For the final step, we refer to that as sort of zipping it up because it looks like you're joining 2 sides of a zipper. Let's do that. So we have the bracelet. I'm wrapping this around it. It looks like it fits just perfectly together there. I'm gonna get this little tail out of the way. And now I am weaving everything together, zipping it up. So I wanna join one side to the other side. So I take my needle and I go directly into that bead that's closest to the other bead. Okay, see that? Give it a little tug. Now we're going into the bead opposite right on the other side. Give it a little tug. And it really does look like we're zipping it up. We're just going back and forth into those beads diagonally. Okay, right there. And we keep going until we get to the very end. And now we have this little gap. This little gap right there. So all I'm going to do to close that is I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this anchor bead. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. There we go. You see how I stuck my needle in the anchor bead and I'm kind of using it to leverage the bead off? Look. There, now it's out of the way. Taking my needle, putting it into that bead that's right there on the other side. See how there's that gap that we want to close? Threading it right in. And now I weave it in just a couple of times because here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want to tie a knot right here and then cut it because if that little knot gets snagged, this whole thing unravels. So we weave in the ends just a little bit and then tie the knot so it's super secure and professional. So all I'm going to do is take my needle and go into a bead super close by. That keeps it hidden. Now I'm going into another one. See how they're touching. So I know that I can use that next door neighbor bead to weave in. All right, I'm just gonna do one more, and then I will take that tail we left behind and I will put that on the needle, weave in through a couple beads, tie a knot, and we'll be done. Go ahead and take this off, move it out of the way, and then thread this needle. Okay. I want to get right up next to this other one. So I just find the closest bead and I start weaving in toward that other tail. I'm almost there. Now, my final step. We're almost there. Okay, so now both of these strings are pointing in the same direction. We want to have them meet from opposite directions. So all I need to do is go sideways into the bead right next to this one. See that? Going into the one right next to it. And you'll see why. Because now, whoops, did that get caught? There we go. Now, look, these strings are right next to each other. It'll be super easy to tie a little knot. Going ahead and taking my needle out, tying a simple overhand knot. I'm gonna tie 2 of those. I'm not making it look simple, but it is. Simple overhand knot. Okay. And give it a little tug. And I do that one more time. Simple overhand knot, give it a little tug. And this is where I really love the X-Acto knife because I can do a cut super clean right next to the beads and you won't see the knot. So I'm holding this pretty taut and actually using the thread to cut itself. So if you can see the end of your knot poking out just a tiny bit, you can use your X-Acto knife or a needle and just kind of stuff it in there a little bit. And there you go. And that's how you make a building block piece of jewelry. So let's go back over the supplies and tools really quick. We have a bench block and pad. We have a chasing hammer, fire line beading wire, Delica beads, have a blade of really any craft blade, beading needles, 16 gauge brass wire. We used a bail shaping plier for that loop on one end of the bracelet. We have flush cutters, and of course, flat nose plier. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like to make your own building block jewelry, get supplies like the ones I use today by checking out the links below. Now don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you'd like for us to teach some more building block jewelry in the future, let me know what you're interested in. Tell me in the comments below. Thanks so much and have a great day.